Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood, and you're watching the Political Vigilante a special guest, special show. We've got a pillow. I'm here with CEO of SWAN Cory Klippsten. Cory, this is the thing I love. I got to say, I love about the crypto world. We're just all on Bitcoin, or on Bitcoin. We're all on
Twitter. It's confusing because it's like x.com now, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
I just had a Mitch McConnell moment, and
you need a handler.
I need a handler just whisk me away. Sorry, he's done. I spent a lot of time in comedy clubs in the 90s, so we might have some memory issues. But I just love talking on Twitter Bitcoin. And you just reach out and meet people, and I reached out to you, and I said, hey, I'd love to interview you for my show. And you're like, come to our event. So we're at the Victorian in Santa Monica, where I've lived for a long time. I love Santa Monica. I really wanted to ask you, first of all, like, what's your orange pill story?
Yeah.
And then how did you come up with SWAN?
All right. It's a lot there to unpack.
I know.
Oh, my God. Well, so listen, what I would say is that about 5% of people actually get Bitcoin when they first come across it. And for whatever reason, they're open to it. And they have the right background for whatever reason. That doesn't mean a specific thing. They could be like a hardcore engineer, or they could be a yogi, or whatever it is. But for some reason, they're into it when they see it, and they dive straight in. The rest of us normies, the 95% like me, we usually have a few swings and misses. So that was the same case with me, right? So it's in my email from like 2012. Didn't even see it. Didn't pay attention to it. Somebody gave me some Bitcoin at a tech conference in January of 2014. I even downloaded like the blockchain.info wallet. That's what their website was back then. And had like, $50 of Bitcoin or whatever. That's worth a lot more now. Lost the private key, didn't research, didn't even know there was a white paper, didn't do shit about it. God, what else was there? Christmas of 2015, a buddy of mine was packaging up a bunch of like startup stakes, like angel investments and advisor shares, into like a Series LLC, and then selling off half of that so he could get some liquidity and like using some bankers. And he asked me to do the deck for it, which I'm like pretty good at putting together those slides from my olden days. And I did, and there was a Bitcoin company in it, that shitty toaster mining thing that became the crypto scam. It was Balaji Srinivasan's company. So that was in there. Didn't really help me understand Bitcoin. And then Ripple was in there. Again, doesn't help you understand Bitcoin. But it's like Bitcoin is on the slides and you're reading about it, but it just didn't click. I was busy with other shit. I think I had a 1-year-old and like was busy making my own venture investments and stuff.
I want to say this real quick. I think the altcoins and the crypto stuff is part of the confusion.
It's the main thing.
Yeah, when just Bitcoin is explained to you, at least for me, I was like, Bitcoin, and then all this crypto, Ethereum, all this stuff starts. Yeah. Then you get like, if you just say it's digital gold,
right,
that lives on a ledger that everyone can see.
Ah.
Oh,
yeah, maybe I got a chance at that.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, but then they immediately give you like mescaline, ketamine, put weed and some malt liquor at the same time, and tell you that's what it's about. It gets really hard. It gets really hard to see the original insight.
It's like, here's some green tea, awesome, and then they just put heroin and crack in it.
Yeah,
oh man. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt your.
So then it wasn't until spring of 2017, with the huge price run up in Bitcoin and then all the shit coins, that I got drawn into the space. My social network and sort of like my professional network was all Silicon Valley startups, and that's kind of what I was doing, was angel investing and advising venture-backed Silicon Valley startups. And it drew me in. The first people I reached out to that seemed to be doing something in the space were actually crypto people. I was lucky enough that one of them, who's managing $1 billion of shitcoins at this point, but at least he said, listen, start by reading this book, Digital Gold, the Nathaniel Popper book, New York Times reporter, which is actually a very good book that was written in 2014. And so I got like a little bit of a grounding that I could come back to later. I still then, all the signal that I had in the VC space that was saying anything about crypto was like tokens, ICOs, Andreessen Horowitz, Union Square Ventures, all these people that I like read their blogs. If they're talking about crypto, they're talking about non-dilutive fundraising for startups by creating a friction token, essentially, what it comes down to. I understand this now. Back then I didn't get it. So I ended up wasting like 11 months of my life, essentially from like May of 2017 till about April of 2018, doing what we call the shitcoin horseshoe, where you start with Bitcoin and you would go down the shitcoin horseshoe and come out the other side.
It's like you got to go that down.
Yeah,
You got to.
brutal.
It's like an alcoholic. Like you got to hit rock bottom.
Gotta hit rock bottom, baby.
And then you come up to
come
this
up the
like
other
spiritual
side.
awakening of I'm just a Bitcoin maximalist.
Yeah. So people helped along the way. The first Bitcoiner that I met that actually made an impression enough for me to like, oh wow, was Jimmy Song, who came out, thank God, to a blockchain conference in Santa Monica, actually across the street at the Airplane Museum from the Barker hangar where we now throw our conference, Pacific Bitcoin, which is crazy.
This is in October.
October 5th and 6th.
Nice.
PacificBitcoin.com. Get your tickets. Super show. And so I was like, well, that's interesting. He's got a different perspective. Kept on thinking that alts were a thing for another few months, but I also started learning about Bitcoin, and it started to sink in over the winter. So I started watching his show with Tone Vase, and then that kind of led to Andreas Antonopoulos clips, and then I bought the Internet of Money, the compilation of his talks put into a book, stuff like that. So I was pretty much convinced that Bitcoin was the rational thing to spend all your time on in the space, and that it was like the economically correct choice to make for like me and my family or whatever. And I also had all these scars from working in and around Silicon Valley for the last decade before that, knowing that you don't really want to be building on a platform that somebody can rug pull you on. So that Bitcoin was like the ultimate platform that can't be rug pulled. So I felt like if you build something in Bitcoin, what you get is a pretty formulaic output from your inputs. So you put in your experience and your effort and your intelligence and your networking and your time, and out should come something valuable. You should be able to build equity value in whatever you're working on and not have to worry about some centralized person or group of people that you can't control pulling the rug on you, which is what happens with all the altcoins.
Dude, that resonates with me on so many levels. One, I lost my home to the crisis in 2010, part of the banking crisis. So it was just up the street. And then, I just got this back. I just got my YouTube monetization back a month ago, but I was demonetized for 2.5 years.
Wow.
I've done thousands of videos and content. And then again, like you said, just somebody else, a tech company could just go, sorry, your content is yanked and we're not paying you. Or actually my content wasn't yanked, but that's happened to friends of mine. Lee Camp, a very political comic, they just yanked his whole channel because it was too political. He was calling out the war machine. This is what I love about Bitcoin is it's like, no, man.
Yeah.
I always, when people say, oh, after, Bitcoin and cryptos, all those scams, I go, there's no Bitcoin CEO to be arrested. The FBI is not coming to Bitcoin headquarters,
Yeah.
So I love that.
Listen, man, I just want to be able to be like free to choose what I want to do and make my own decisions and not have anybody else make the decisions for me. Like that's what another YouTube story. I posted about this yesterday. I'm trying to listen to YouTube music. I'm grandfathered in because I used to work for Google, so I got like the $7.99 monthly. It was Google Play Music back then.
Yes.
And anyway, so I have like massive storage on Google Drive, plus free YouTube Premium, plus free YouTube Music for $7.99 a month forever. So that's my excuse for why I still was using that.
That's not a bad,
anyway,
that's not a bad excuse.
So, but they rug pulled the shit out of me. Now, all these playlists that I've had for like a decade, if they don't like the song and they think it's like worrisome, it has a pop-up and won't keep playing the song, and it makes you confirm that you're okay with the suicidal image. It's fucking Rage Against the Machine that keeps on getting stopped during my workouts. I have to get rid of all my rage music. Anyway, so I'm rebuilding all my playlists on Spotify, and fuck you, YouTube Music, you granny state bitch.
Yes, fuck it. So that's awesome. Then we're like, because of going through all that, you said, let's create SWAN. To tell everyone what SWAN is. It's not just a crypto exchange. Like, tell people what it is.
Yeah, I mean, so very simply what we started was an on-ramp into Bitcoin. Okay. Thinking of Bitcoin as a savings technology, as something that you should set and forget, like just set up your automatic savings plan. So almost the whole first year, we launched in March of 2020. You couldn't even make a one-time buy until like December. So the first 9 months, it was just people setting up savings plans where it takes a little bit of money out of your bank account, automatically makes the purchase. We even had free automatic withdrawals since the beginning, which we still have. So the whole point is just kind of stacking sats, be humble, stack sats, as Odell had coined around the same time, probably 2018 he said that. And then we just kept on adding things that kind of made sense. And I think the end goal is we want people to say like, we're your Bitcoin friend, we're your partner alongside in this journey. So we do tons of educational media. We now serve all kinds of different customer segments with many different products and services. So, we have high net worth division called SWAN Private. We have SWAN Advisor for the wealth management market. We have retirement products like SWAN IRA. We just launched, well, we're not official, but we're in market with SWAN Institutional, kind of announce it more later. So that's for like big company buyers. We've had SWAN Business for years. Just kind of more and more things. And we just want to be a global Bitcoin company that serves every need that you would ever think of. We're launching SWAN Vault at Pacific Bitcoin, so that's our multi-sig storage. And I just want people to say like,
What's a multi-sig storage?
So if you think about custody, one way that a lot of people use, companies and people use to store their Bitcoin is not just have like a single key, but to have a 2 of 3 multi-sig, for instance, where maybe you would hold 2 keys. And if you have both keys and you want to make a transaction, great. If you lose a key, well, SWAN has a key, right? So this is like, here tonight, Drew Bansal, who's a co-founder of Unchained Capital. That's how they started, was kind of custody first with what they call collaborative custody, and I love that term. We use it as well.
Because it takes away the fear of adoption of people going, well, you can just lose it. You can just lose your Bitcoin. I hear that from a lot of people that don't understand it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a good way to do it. I mean, you can do that with a single key and with redundancy. Like if you know the story of like in 2012, before the Winklevi became total douchebags, what they did is they took the private key for their Bitcoin stash and they like split it in 2, and then they made like 3 copies, and then I think they went and distributed those 6 pieces of paper into safety deposit boxes in like 6 small town vaults around the country. So that was kind of their way of like, if we're going to touch this coin, we got to do some legwork to go touch this coin and nobody can ever fuck with it, right? Which is kind of cool. So this is just a much simpler way of getting to kind of the same answer.
And you guys just put out I was just on your Twitter, and there's a video that came out a couple of weeks ago that I really love. I forget what you say, like take action to avoid the war. Like
the race to avoid the war.
That's it. The race to avoid the war. And it was like, because we are in a race. This is the thing I wanted to ask you about, and this is what that video is encapsulating.
Yep.
The CBDCs, the central banking digital currency, I think these are dangerous. Yep. The regulation, maybe there should be some, but I'm really worried it's just, again, the big banks and the central banks and the central governments want to figure out a way, because they can't control Bitcoin. Yep. So they want to get us all on that. So explain what that race to avoid the war is.
Yeah, sure. So this is essentially, after being in the space for 5+ years, now it's 6. Last fall, I was able to finally sort of crystallize and write out in an article. So that video was me basically reading the article that I put out last November. And what I think is actually going on here, and I think it's a framework that kind of encapsulates everything that we are doing, everything that every other company and advocate is doing, and basically explains who and what the people that are working contra Bitcoin are doing and what that race is to avoid the war. So the war would be a dark period where the only entity on Earth that could actually cause problems for Bitcoiners, which is basically the State Department of the United States government at the end of the day. Right, that's pretty much it.
What have I been talking to this audience about for years? Who the real enemy is?
Yeah, I mean, but they're not an enemy yet.
Right.
And what I want to do is actually flip society. That means win the race. So if you win the adoption race, and this comes down to like the intransigent minority, the first mission statement that I put out is kind of a subset of the overarching theory of race to avoid the war. It's called 10 million Bitcoiners. So I wrote that in February of 2020 before we launched the company in March. 10 million Bitcoiners says if we have 10 million Bitcoiners defined specifically in this case for winning this race as people who have a decent chunk of their net worth in Bitcoin and know and care enough about Bitcoin to fight for it. That could be going to a town hall, that could be voting, that could be just like, just aggressively being in favor of it. That's enough to flip society because it's an issue that we won't bend on. and we'll convince other people of. It's like the single issue voter. So if you have 10 million Bitcoiners in the United States, which is the only market that actually matters, because again, the only entity that could actually coordinate a dark period of a few decades. Let's be clear, like in the end, Bitcoin will win no matter what, because it's just better money and humanity will wake up to that. But we could have a boots on necks, 6102, take the gold kind of thing for Bitcoin, turning off all the on ramps, taxes, tariffs on mining, all this kind of shit could happen if we don't win the adoption race. If you win the adoption race, then number goes up. You have a ton of demand to change the tax laws. You get rid of capital gains tax on Bitcoin. Medium of exchange takes off because people, if the market cap is like 20 trillion instead of half a trillion, now there's a lot of people that are willing to actually start spending Bitcoin. Now you have merchant adoption. Now you have it working its way into all aspects of the financial system. It's the global reserve currency, all these different things. So you have to win that race. And if you win that race, you never have to fight the war. But it's dynamic. So there are people making the government run faster, right? And that's the CBDC people, and that's like Ripple funding Greenpeace to fund Bitcoin mining, and it's like all these people trying to thwart Bitcoin. It's all of the altcoiners, the crypto pump and dumpers, the crypto VCs, the Andreessen Horowitzes, the Vinny Langhams, whatever of the world, like these people that are out there trying to siphon off demand from Bitcoin and say, oh, look at my shiny shitcoin. They are slowing down Bitcoin in this race to avoid the war, and they're making it more likely that we enter a dark period of a few decades that basically pushes off the ushering in of a new era of human freedom and progress. So it's not small stakes. It's not just like, oh, mean Bitcoin maximalist, leave me and my shitcoining alone. It's like, no, motherfucker, you're fucking with people in their lives and their prospects. And it's not cool.
Wow. God, the way you articulate that is amazing. And I talk about Bitcoin and digital stuff on the show a little bit, but I'm not as knowledgeable about it. So when I hear about how Ripple is funding Greenpeace to say the environment stuff is unreal. Because I got a response to one of my tweets today about like, oh, it's bad for the environment. I was just down in El Salvador in June. I haven't been in a country in recent years that had hope. That country has hope.
Yeah.
And there is, green Bitcoin mining projects happening down there. The Volcano one, which is $1 billion project. I mean, I saw, adoption, depending on where you're at, is anywhere from 30 to 50, 60%. Certain parts are more than others. Bitcoin Beach, El Tunco was probably 80, 90%. I rented a surfboard there. And I saw it. I saw in this little country, the size of Massachusetts, with 6.5 million people, which is like maybe all of LA County. I saw it working. I saw it pulling people out of poverty. I saw it changing lives. I saw it on top of, it's a separate thing, but like Bukele locking up all of the criminals, that obviously helped too. But I saw like we could have this all over the world. We could have this all over the world.
Yeah.
And that's why what you're talking about, the race to prevent the war or stop the war, is so critical, because the opposite is more of this indentured servitude, more of this. LA, the cost of living is through the roof, man.
Yeah, the El Salvador thing is really interesting. I think Bitcoin is a symbol of freedom and change and improvement there. It's not actually causal, but I think it's correlated.
Yeah.
So, it's somebody that came in and shook things up and is doing things differently and doing things, to improve things. And Bitcoin is one of those things that he's doing to improve things.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. But, it is, again, it's very early in the path of Bitcoin to even becoming a mature store of value, because most places it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend Bitcoin, and because most of our expectation is that the purchasing power of Bitcoin is going to increase significantly.
Yeah.
So it's an awesome experiment on the medium of exchange side in El Salvador, but I think what they're doing with the mining and what they're doing with adding it to their treasury, those are things that actually make perfect sense today. And then obviously there's like some remittance stuff that could help, but there's still, that was already a pretty well-trodden remittance corridor with low fees, because it's dollars to dollars. There's like 60 companies that do it. So it was already like low on the list of egregious fees. So that, again, like, I think we're better served in the Bitcoin space when we promote narratives that are definitely true and not grasp and reach for things where they can say, oh, you lied about this. What else are you lying about?
Right.
So it's much better to just stand like firmly on 2 feet and support the narratives that are definitely true.
That's a good point. Because I think part of it in seeing El Salvador, and since the main thing you're talking about is America and how important it is to get America to adopt this, it almost seems like it's an easier sell in third world countries where they don't have access to traditional banking, but everybody has a smartphone.
100%.
So it's like in a first world country, it's like, well, why do I even?
Yep.
We don't have the same hurdles.
Yes.
So how do we get over that in the first world countries?
Yeah. So I should also say, like, it's these things going on in, El Salvador or in, a lot of countries around the world, stuff going on in Vietnam, great Bitcoiners doing stuff in Costa Rica,
the
Portugal, Philippines.
Yes.
So all of these things, again, because Bitcoin is decentralized, so if there is a big mining facility in like New Zealand or Paraguay, that makes it harder to attack Bitcoin. So that's making Bitcoin run faster. If there's somebody in like Montenegro working on privacy technology for Bitcoin or some kind of scaling layer like ARC, right? Barak is over in Turkey, and he's working on ARC, which should scale Bitcoin transactions to the moon or something like that. That again makes it much harder to get in the way of Bitcoin, makes it look more unassailable, makes it look more like a losing battle. Nobody likes to lose. Right? You'd rather be on the side of the winning team, especially if you rationally understand that it's actually better for humanity. And I think what will happen is I do think that we will win. I'm trying really hard to make sure that we do. And I think that within, 15 to 20 years, it will be the rational thing for the State Department, the bankers, the legislators, whatever. There'll be millennials and Gen Z in Congress, right? I think it'll make sense for them to say, hey, cool, let's treat Bitcoin as a second currency. The rest of the world has been doing this shit forever. They have prices in Swiss francs and euros and dollars in the airport. And Turkey, you can buy stuff in euros and lira and dollars. Like, it's not that big a deal to have 2 price tags. Let's coexist for a few decades. And then eventually I think they'll just get rid of the dollar. But it should take probably the rest of the century.
It could. And that's that, I guess, yeah, the one ripple. I mean, if we have a big financial collapse type of thing, that could, I don't know, could create more of the darkness that you're talking about, or that could be a catalyst for mass adoption. Yeah. Because if traditional money collapses, we're just talking about there's a real estate bubble in America and all this other stuff, if that collapses, wouldn't it seem like institutional money would then just pour into Bitcoin, or am I just being too optimistic because I'm a maxi?
So I guess the way I would look at that is if you're thinking about like a shock and then what the reaction to the shock would be, shock doctrine style, it makes it even more important to run fast and run hard now, because if the shock is bigger and comes sooner, if the shock comes sooner and is bigger, then the reaction to that could be, like you said, it might be adversarial instead of, in favor of. Right?
That's cool.
I almost feel like the sooner a shock like that comes, the more likely it would be clamp down, fuck Bitcoin, pump dollars, boots on necks, stuff like that. So, yeah, a shock coming sooner is probably not good for winning the race.
That's a good opinion. Well, I know you're busy. You got your event tonight. I really appreciate you taking your time, man. And I love that your whole philosophy. I love so many maximalists when I was down in El Salvador. Everyone has this like spread the word.
Yeah.
Bitcoin Beach. Everyone was wanting to talk to me. I've had Max Kaiser on the show. I've loved the Bitcoin maxi community and vibe. It's different than the like Lamborghini crypto group.
Yeah. Those cardboard Lambos, man. Unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, we will be down in El Salvador. A lot of SWANs are going down for adopting Bitcoin, which starts right after Pacific Bitcoin. So there's actually people flying down on the same flight to head down there. And then we have a house in El Zonte October 11th through November 21st. So if you decide to go back down, we'll do parties with Max and Stacy. A bunch of the Swans you'll meet tonight will be down there. So
I'm in the process of raising money for a documentary about El Salvador and Bitcoin, so hopefully we'll be down there.
There you go.
All right. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it, man.
All right.
Thank you, guys.